think that, having watched stuff up till now, that I've convinced anybody that socialism or communism is the best way to do things or anything like that. That's not really the point that I wanted to make or try to make. I just wanted to show you the differences between sort of socialism, capitalism, that they both have upsides, they both have downsides. So let's start talking about capitalism a little bit, and let's just ask some questions about it. And I'm going to make just sort of an argument today in this video, and then I want you to think about whether this is true or whether it's not true, or probably better, rather than true or not true, what's true about it, what's false about it, how do we fix this problem? So one of the things that we have from what we just talked about is capitalism is very efficient. If you're looking for efficiency, again, this is sort of macroeconomics 101. If you're looking for efficiency, capitalism is sweet. But does it create the outcomes that we want? So you have a very efficient system that creates rich and poor and makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. That creates, again, if we don't have government intervention, that could create some outcomes that we really don't like. Some things like slavery, or some things like bad medicine being sold and things like that. You could also ask the question the socialists ask, capitalism, will it collapse? Will it sort of collapse in and on itself because as the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, are they just going to say, this is awful, we're going to throw it out? Can capitalism grow forever? Should capitalism be changed, or should it be limited in some way? Should it be, maybe we don't want to throw out capitalism, but how then do we make capitalism work in a way that matches the values that we have? So let's just talk about capitalism and global poverty here for a second. Capitalism is essentially the prices and production are determined through competition in a free market. If you didn't get that from the first two PowerPoint things we did, this is capitalism. Prices and production are determined through competition in a free market. What's the goal of capitalism? If you are going to be someone who's going to succeed in this, how do you succeed? Now, you guys know the answer to this. Success in this, so if you make $100,000, have you succeeded? The answer is no. If you make $200,000, have you succeeded? The answer is no. At what point is a company, let's say you're in charge of a company, at what point can you say, we've done it, we've achieved success in capitalism? The answer is never. The goal in capitalism is what we call the endless accumulation of capital. Once I have money, I need to take that money and make more money. So the company's main motive is profit. I know you're going to see companies out there saying, we're with you in this coronavirus. We really want to, we're going to give $1 million worth of masks to this, or we're going to donate $3 million to kids in Africa who need this or that. And you're going to see this all over the place. But the reason they're doing that is so you like the company and you buy more stuff from them. If there was no profit in that, they wouldn't do it. I know you millennials, or you guys are Gen Zers, you really want to say, I believe in this company. But honestly, the company exists for profit. If they do anything else on top of it, it's only because it helps them get profit. Great. So company's main motive is profit. What do you do with that profit? Now I'm a company, I've got profit. What do I do with it? I invest that profit, we're going to call that capital, to make more profit. We're going to call that capital. This is capitalism. That's the job of capitalism. Okay, great. Now, here's the next question. If you don't like this, then there's going to be a tricky part here, but this is just sort of how the system works. Okay, do capitalists want free markets? I just had that whole conversation about a market economy and freedom of the market, right? Free from government intervention. The answer is, if I am the owner of a business, I don't want a free market. You know what my preference is? Let's say that I'm Pepsi. Do I want to compete with Coke? No. What I would prefer is just Pepsi, no Coke. And I would love if the government got involved to make sure that I succeeded and they didn't succeed. Well, now the United States might not may not play favorites between Coke and Pepsi, but the United States will play favorites between U.S. corporations and other corporations. And what we're going to call this is a capitalist wants to control a monopoly. That's when the producer determines the profits, or the prices I could even say, and they're going to get higher profits. That's ideal. So if the U.S. government is going to play favorites with U.S. corporations over corporations of other countries, and the U.S. has the most money, the most power, are they going to help them out? And the answer is absolutely yes. And the capitalists don't want free market. They want the U.S. to get involved on their side. This leads to a thing called dependency theory. Capitalists are going to invest their capital to control state power to ensure profits keep coming. So if I am, let's say I am the owner of a U.S. steel company. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my profits. I'm going to invest in making sure certain politicians are elected. I'm going to invest in certain messages out there so the American people love me, and so that the U.S. government is going to do things to protect U.S. steel versus German steel, Indian steel, Chinese steel, etc. Tariffs on imports, so these are like taxes. Have the government put tariffs on steel imports, subsidies on steel exports, so where they give me some money if I will export that stuff and that will help me be more competitive out there. Have the government manage these unbalanced trade agreements. So I just want you to think about this. The United States and Costa Rica are sitting down to have a trade agreement. Who do you think is going to get the better part of the trade agreement? And why? The United States is, because let's say that the United States and Costa Rica decide not to trade anymore. U.S. is not going to notice this at all, but Costa Rica's economy is going to collapse. So who needs who more? Costa Rica needs to deal more, so they have to give in more, and so it's an unbalanced trade agreement. As long as the United States has a lot of power and money, it's going to use that power and money on behalf of its own businesses, to its own capitalists, to protect that. And then, of course, it can just straight up use coercion, threats of coercion, force to do this. And if we want good examples of this, all we got to do is take World Civ and talk about the past, which leads us to this. Old school. Old school is colonialism. Colonialism is essentially, if we look in the 1700s, 1800s, and we look at Europe and the United States and Japan around the world, they basically took over these places all over the world. They used military force to create a dependency relationship with the colony. So the colony, let's take Britain and India. Britain sends its troops down into India. Now, India has to buy stuff only from Britain at whatever price Britain says. And Britain gets to take the stuff from India at whatever price it wants to set because it's using military force. Like, what are you going to do? Say no? I'll just take it. And that's colonialism. The core take raw materials from the periphery. So Britain takes raw materials from India, or the U.S. takes raw materials from the Philippines. Okay, that's sort of the old version of this. We don't really like colonialism anymore, so we have this new thing called neocolonialism. If we see the United States sending troops into other countries to do this, we would say, whoa, that's too far, uncool, freedom, all that kind of stuff. But what happens today is that states use economic and other means to create a dependency relationship with poorer countries. So we don't actually send military force down there. We just do things like we had on the last page: tariffs, subsidies, unbalanced trade agreements. Not necessarily coercion, but maybe there'll be coercion if that's the case. We'll give you a little bit of humanitarian aid if you make sure you keep your country open to our corporations, that sort of thing. Underdevelopment in the third world countries is then a necessary part of the global capitalist system. This would be the argument that's made. Now, I'm not saying you have to buy this. I'm just saying, if you follow this logic, do you agree with this? That essentially third world countries, poor countries around the world, are kept underdeveloped on purpose because these countries up here want that relationship and they want to make money, the capitalists in those countries. So here's the question I just want to leave you with. That's an argument. You might buy that argument. You might disagree with that argument. I'm just throwing it out there to say, what do you think? We're going to talk more about development next week in these countries, but this is just an argument that's been thrown out there. I want to see if you agree with that. And one of the last sort of pieces I want to leave you with is capitalism the cause or the cure of global poverty? You are probably convinced, I don't want to say everybody, but I'm going to say most of you guys who were raised in the United States, Europe, Brazil, essentially you're on board with capitalism is the cure for poverty. Now, here's the problem. If we look around the world, many people globally believe it is the cause. Again, remember, you guys you tend to be living in some of the wealthier parts. Even poor parts of America and Europe tend to be better off than really poor parts around the world. If you've just done a little bit of study abroad and going around, you've seen poverty out there. And you can also understand where if you're talking about that from a context of a slum in India or in Nairobi or something like that, that you may be a little more on board that capitalism feels a lot more like the cause of poverty than the cure. So the question I would ask you is underdevelopment and poverty intentional or is it unintentional? Meaning we know that underdevelopment and poverty happens and it does result from capitalist systems, but that doesn't mean that capitalists are sitting there going, I can't wait to make people poor. But it could be systematic. It could be something that sort of the system allows to happen, even though none of us sit back and say, I hope everybody stays poor. Should we morally and or can we practically not support global capitalism? I mean, are we... It's a tough question. I don't really necessarily want to push you on that, but I do want you to think about whether global capitalism is a system that is an okay system. And is there even an alternative to capitalism? There might not even be an alternative. Do we need to tweak capitalism? Do we need to get rid of capitalism? I don't really know. Is capitalism just super awesome and we just need to let it fly and let it go? I don't really know that either. But it's a question that should be asked. So what I'm going to have you guys do here is I'm going to have you watch and read some things about how capitalism leads to inequality. And then I want you to just sort of reflect on that in the assignment that you have there. Okay, thanks guys. Another week done. I will see you guys on week 3.